Last week I did an unboxing of the new set of Dungeons & Dragons miniatures, Monster Menagerie III. If you want to watch that video, you can click the I in the corner. When I made that video, I didn't really know what was in the set. I went in pretty blind. I knew basically what they advertised on the box, but otherwise I had no idea what I was going to get. So now I've had time to think about it, to really look at the miniatures and to do some research on them. And I wanted to give you a few more thoughts and do some comparisons between the miniatures in this set, particularly these giants, and the giants in the Storm King's Thunder set. There's also a really good review out there by AlphaStream. AlphaStream is a very prolific official D&D adventure writer, and he does a review, I think, of a lot of the miniature sets. I have a link to it down below in the description. I recommend you check that out. He had some problems with this set, and I wanted to go over that too. This set, I got 10 of the booster boxes, which gives me 40 minis. There's 60 unique miniatures in the set. Of the 60 unique ones, in my 10 boxes, I got 34 unique ones and 6 duplicates, which isn't bad. I wanted to go over the rarity level and what I got there, and that's where things changed in this set compared to some of the previous sets. So for me, there were 16 available common ones, and I got 13 of them. There were 27 uncommons, and I got 17 of those. The rares, there's different kinds of rares this time, which is what's changed. Regular rares, there were 7 of them available. I only got one, this Storm Giant here, which I'm actually pretty happy with. But there's also something new called variant rares. Variant rares, there's 10 total, and it's 5 unique sculpts, and each one has a variant. And the variant is fairly minor differences, maybe a slightly different pose, a slightly different weapon, a different color scheme, but it's very minor in the changes. It used to be when you would buy a case, which is 4 bricks, so 32 booster boxes in all, which goes for about $400, you were guaranteed to get one of everything. You would get one of every rare, plus all the commons and uncommons. Now, apparently, when you buy a case, you only are promised one of the variants, so you're going to have to track down the other half. So of the 10, you're probably going to get 5, and the other variants you're going to have to track down on the aftermarket. So if you're a completionist, that's something to keep in mind. For most people, it may not matter too much, but if you really are spending $400 and you're expecting to get the whole set, that's a big problem. And the variants are going to go for probably $15 or $20 or more in the aftermarket. So that is something to keep in mind. As far as the rest of the set, there were some errors. If you noticed, the Kraken Priest mini had a mislabeling. It was labeled as a Tridrone, which I don't think I noticed at the time because I haven't used either one of those characters in my games, but that's a bit of an unfortunate error in there. But otherwise, I was relatively happy with it. I think this set is very good if you're playing Storm King's Thunder. The minis in this set mostly come from Storm King's Thunder or the Volo's Guide to Monster book. If you're not running Storm King's Thunder, this may not be a great set for you. I wanted to go ahead right now and compare the giants here from this set to the ones that were in the previous Storm King's Thunder set so we can really see the differences. So we're going to go to split screen. On the left side, you can see the new minis from this set, and on the right side, you can see the ones from the Storm King's Thunder set. So let's take a look at that. All right, these are the hill giants. On the left, you can see the new female hill giant from Monster Menagerie III. On the right is the male hill giant from the Storm King's Thunder set. As you can see, they go together pretty well. One thing to note is that in this adventure, Storm King's Thunder, if you're running it, there is a difference between how the males behave and how the females behave. I won't go into too many details in case you're wanting to play the game, but I think it's nice to be able to have a miniature of each, at least. Also available in Monster Menagerie III is the Volo variant, the Mouth of Gallant. I didn't get one of those, so I don't have it to show. It's not listed. None of the Volo ones are listed in the adventure for Storm King's Thunder, but they could easily be slotted in to give you a little bit more flavor and depth in the adventure. So that would be nice to have. The only other hill giant figure out there in the icon set is Chief Guh, who is the leader of the hill giants. Her mini is available as a case incentive in the Storm King's Thunder set. A very interesting mini that is fun to have when you get to that point in the adventure, but probably not super useful outside of it. This next set is the Stone Giants. There's only 2 minis available, and here they are. On the left, you can see the Stone Giant Dreamwalker from the Volo's Guide, and on the right is the regular Stone Giant from the Storm King's Thunder set. Again, the Dreamwalker is not included in the adventure, but you could easily slot it in. It also just looks like a regular stone giant to me. Actually, these two I thought were interesting. If you notice the hill giants, they look like they were designed together. They look like a set. These look like, one, it looks like an iteration on the other to me. The one from the Monster Menagerie set is more detailed, has a different skin tone. The textures on the clothing are different. It just looks like a more modern version. And also they have a very similar pose. One has a different foot in the lead, but otherwise they look quite similar in their pose. So I don't know if these go together quite as well as the hill giants do. This next set are the frost giants. On the left, you can see the regular frost giant from the Monster Menagerie set, and on the right, you can see the frost giant from the Storm King's Thunder set. These do look like they go together. It's another gender variant, so it looks like you could put them on the table together and they'll be fine. It's just for flavor in this case. There's no real story difference between the two as far as I can tell. The other ones available out there, you have the Volos variant, which is in the Monster Menagerie set. That's the Frost Giant Everlasting one. That is a very interesting mini. I'm sorry I didn't get it, but it would be interesting to slot that into the story when you're playing it through. And the other one available is Harshnag in the Storm King's Thunder set. I won't talk about who he is, but he's a named NPC who's important to the story. And you could probably use him as just a regular frost giant if you wanted some variety, but it's nice to have a special mini for that special NPC in the game. Here are our fire giants. On the left, you see the fire giant Dreadnought. This is the Volo variant from the Monster Menagerie set. On the right, you see the fire giant from the Storm King's Thunder set. One thing that I noticed is that the new one, the variant, the Volos variant, the Dreadnought, while it's a big, hefty, heavy miniature, it's a bit shorter than a lot of the other fire giants. One thing that's important when you're playing with giant characters is the relative height of the fire giants versus the other giants. The height of the characters shows their place in the hierarchy of the giant culture. And this one being somewhat shorter, I find it just it might be a bit confusing to the players if they figured out how giants work. It's only slightly taller than the hill giants, and it's noticeably shorter than the other fire giants and the frost giants, who are supposed to be about equal heights. So that's just one thing I noticed. I mean, it is leaning forward, so perhaps it's not supposed to be as tall, but it is something I noticed. Otherwise, the figure is really nice. It's heavy, it's got a nice paint job on the shield, and it would be really interesting to add into your adventure for the tactical purposes. It has some interesting combat mechanics, and it could be interesting in the story as well. Now I'm going to change out the fire giant here on the Storm King's Thunder set on the right to the other one that came in that set. This one is just a different model. This one, there's two variants. There's one that has a mace and one that has a hammer. So this is the other one that was available in the Storm King's Thunder set, so you can take a look at it as well. Both of these minis are pretty interesting, I think, particularly that first one with the fiery sword and the flame in one hand. So there's a few really good fire giant miniatures out there. And these are the Storm Giants. On the left, you have the Storm Giant from Monster Menagerie III. Storm King's Thunder didn't actually have a generic Storm Giant. On the right here, I have King Hecaton. And the other ones available, you have the Volos variant in the Monster Menagerie set. That's the Storm Giant Quintessent. And in the Storm King's Thunder set, you have another named NPC, and forgive my pronunciation, Imrith. And I don't have that one either, unfortunately. But it's nice to have just a regular Storm Giant to use to fill out that adventure, since really there wasn't one available. And it's nice, there are opportunities in Storm King's Thunder to just have, a series of regular Storm Giants. It's not just the named NPCs who show up in that adventure. So I think having this one here really fills out maybe a missing slot in the Storm King's Thunder mini set. So this is a good one to get. And keep in mind, you can pick up these on the aftermarket for varying prices just individually if there's just one or two that you want to get. Finally, we have the Cloud Giants. As you can see, I only have one here. This is the regular Cloud Giant from the Storm King's Thunder set. There was no Cloud Giant in the Monster Menagerie set. No love for the Cloud Giants. The only other one out there is the Countess Sansuri mini from the Storm King's Thunder set, another named NPC. There is a Volo variant in the books, the smiling one, but that doesn't have a mini. It didn't get a mini in the set, even though all the other giants got their Volo variant. I don't know why that one was excluded. You could probably just use Countess Sansuri as a smiling one if you wanted to have that particular variant in your adventure, but it's a shame that there's no mini for that one. It would be a nice one. Okay, so that's a little comparison of the minis from the Storm King's Thunder set compared to the new Monster Menagerie set. I think these two are important to compare against each other because the Monster Menagerie set is really only useful if you're playing Storm King's Thunder. There are some minis in here that you can use for other campaigns, but I don't think this would be the set that you were going to buy if you weren't running Storm King's Thunder. If you're running Curse of Strahd, if you're running any of the other adventures, Tomb of Annihilation, this is probably not a set that you're necessarily going to go to in your top 5 sets. But let's kind of compare them a little bit more and what you get in each one, not just the big minis, but the smaller ones too. So in Storm King's Thunder, you have some minis that you can use for common purposes. There's a homunculus, which is useful if you have a wizard player who has that 6th level spell. There's some generic bandits and sprites. They also have some minis that would be useful if you're playing Curse of Strahd. They have the Scarecrow and the Night Hag and the Wight. Also useful just in the Storm King's Thunder adventure in that set, you have the Winter Wolf and the Hellhound, which are pets that some of the giants keep themselves. You have the Fomorians, which I think show up in Out of the Abyss, if you're interested in that adventure. And it also has some Yuan-Ti, which show up in Tomb of Annihilation. And there's also a lot of player characters and NPCs. One thing that was interesting in the Storm King's Thunder set is you got a lot of random NPC characters that had names that didn't show up at all in the adventure. And so people had to do some digging to try to figure out, who are these characters? Are they from the Neverwinter video game? Are they from some of the novels that maybe only a few people have read? Turns out they asked Mike Merles, and he responded that they were a gang of giant hunters that they created in the art concept process. So in case you're wondering who some of those characters are, like Ungart, that's who they are. They're just some ones that the developers came up with. But you can use those for NPCs in your game and any game you're running, or player characters if you want to. Now in the Monster Menagerie set, there's actually quite a few common characters that you can use in any adventure. You have kobolds and goblins and gnolls and sturges. The Grey Slad can show up. It shows up, I think, in some of the urban encounter, random encounters that they introduced in Xanathar's Guide. There's Sea Spawn if your adventurers go underwater. Wereboars and Sturges. Ulatharid. The Goblin Husker is just an amazing mini. No matter what you're doing, I recommend you track that one down, no matter what you're playing, and incorporate it into your story in one way or another. And a lot of these are from Xanathar's, are listed in the Xanathar's Guide random encounters. And a lot of them are from the Volo's Guide. That's where they originated from. Monster Menagerie also includes some that are useful in other adventures. You have the Vampire Spawn and the Arcanoloth, which are from Curse of Strahd. They show up there. The Magmen and the Kraken Priest would be useful if you're playing Storm King's Thunder. The Quadrone and the Bearded Devil show up in Tomb of Annihilation. And the Gibbering Mouther is an Underdark creature that you would see if you play Out of the Abyss. Another one that's fairly interesting, and I didn't even realize this at first, and I just did some research for this video. The Nameless One is the player character from Planescape Torment. If you were like me and were obsessed with that game 20 years ago, I don't know how long ago it came out, that's who that is. From all the pictures I've seen, it has a really lousy paint job. And that's one of the things that AlphaStream complained about. I didn't get that character, unfortunately, so I didn't get to see it myself. But that's who that is, in case you're curious. This one also has some NPCs and player characters that you can use. You have the Gnome Wizard, the Dragonborn Fighter, the Human Bard, Tiefling Road, the Aasimar Paladin, which I got and looks beautiful, the Triton Fighter, some very interesting NPCs and player characters that you can use in your adventure. So again, Monster Menagerie 3, who is it for? Primarily, it's for you if you're playing Storm King's Thunder. Otherwise, you may just want to search out some of the very specific and interesting and very cool minis individually in the aftermarket rather than getting a case or a brick for your... spending that much money might not be useful to you. But overall, I think if you're playing Storm King's Thunder, it's definitely worth investing in, just going ahead and getting a brick at least. But do it maybe after you've bought the brick from the Storm King's Thunder icon set. But I got one brick of each, and I think I'm pretty set for this adventure, which we're running through now with my home campaign. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below. And thank you for watching. We'll see you soon.